I wasn't really even going to do this, but certain people couldn't leave well enough alone, and they had to keep talking about it, so here goes.
Time to light the match for the burning truth with Ben Dallas.
Some of you might know that I made previous videos about this weirdo AM radio guy, Casey Hendrickson, committing stolen valor. Now, apparently, this guy also considers himself to be some sort of superstar. Imagine, if you will, being so much of a sociopath that you're able to justify obvious lies that you made about your own military record simply because you claim to have told the truth on other occasions. So that somehow cancels out all of the lies. It takes a special kind of person to even think that way, but I digress. Because obviously, Casey Hendrickson is so famous from AM radio that everyone already knows his entire history and hangs on to every word that he's ever said. Now, fast forward to more recent times. There's this veterans group called the Common Veterans, and they have a podcast. And Casey Hendrickson is also part of that podcast. What this veterans group ended up doing was defending Casey Hendrickson on obvious examples of stolen valor. Instead of acknowledging what they saw, they just hit the easy button and they say it's out of context. Of course, they did this without providing their version of the proper context. Now, initially, I looked up this veterans group and I saw that they actually do some good work for veterans. So I decided not to push the envelope any further. I was going to leave it at that. I was simply going to give them the benefit of the doubt and then just chalk it up to them being manipulated by this poser. But they decided to double down on stupid, and they kept defending this fraudster. Now, they did this by insulting both myself and another veteran, Clifton French, who also called out these examples of stolen valor. As a veteran myself, I will not tolerate someone disrespecting the service of other combat veterans for their own benefit so they can score patriot points for a global audience. Falsely claiming military experiences and knowledge in tactical matters that had nothing to do with his very brief time in service in the military is unacceptable. Moreover, anyone involved in a veterans organization knowingly defending this type of disgusting behavior should be ashamed of themselves and rightly called out. Finally, let's watch this clip from the Common Veterans podcast and watch them perform mental gymnastics to defend this poser. Now, during this clip, of course, I will respond point by point. Afterwards, I will provide additional examples of even more stolen valor by Casey Hendrickson. The things he's claiming to have experienced and know about are things he could have only done if he had been overseas. Also, this compilation will add additional context to my old example of him committing stolen valor. Turns out, it's not so hard to find this stuff since he's so obsessed with his own self-embellishment. Enjoy the clip.
Let's talk about some stolen valor. Like, let's go back before we hit that up. Let's just go back and hit up Casey one more time because he is not stolen valor, and yeah.
Well, the guy or the two guys, I think one was more of jumping on the bandwagon, but let's paint with a broad brush. Those two guys have an axe to grind and tried to make a name for themselves, in my opinion, by throwing him onto that stolen valor bus, and he never did it.
Well, he's right on both accounts. When someone commits stolen valor, I do, in fact, have an axe to grind. But he's also right again, because myself and Clifton French from Real News Michiana, we were definitely trying to make a name for ourselves. I mean, especially Clifton French. I mean, despite spending over a decade on ABC News, he just wrapped up a documentary with HBO Max. So I can totally see the logic in attacking an AM radio host to get an unfair advantage, to dominate the whoa market on AM radio.
I've been there with him on several different occasions where he has said, I'm a veteran, not a combat veteran, never served here, never served there, but I was a veteran and I did serve. And how you can mistake that for stolen valor is beyond me.
And he
unless
spoke
you're
it.
trying to make a point to make someone look bad to make yourself look good.
And he spoke at 3 or 4 events that we've hosted.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
So it's not like, you know,
Yeah, he's never in any of the events that I've heard him speak at on this podcast. Yeah, he has never tried to portray himself as having combat experience. He talks about his service, and talks about how he got out, talks about the struggles he had going in as a high school student, and then coming back to high school in the split, whatever it was called, split entry, program. But yeah, never around me has he ever said, try to claim any combat experience.
And I can also, the videos that this guy posted were completely taken out of context. And the videos literally contradict everything that he's saying, right? In the videos. So, yeah.
So never around you did he commit stolen valor. You have never heard him commit stolen valor. So that means it never happened, right? That means the examples I showed of him committing stolen valor, those must be deep fakes or something, right? Like those aren't true. No way. Bottom line, in the example that I played in my previous video that you just said you watched, he claimed to have had experience and knowledge in Afghanistan. The only way that could have been taken out of context is if he was reading someone else's words. However, he was obviously referring to himself, as he even said his experience in Afghanistan and Iraq stems from, quote, his time in service. There is no existing context that you can provide that makes that make sense.
I've talked a lot about Bosnia, my experiences with that conflict. The things that were being done to innocent people in that conflict, very few people know.
Yeah, your average civilian doesn't understand how terrorists work. That's what happens when you run that op intentionally bad, because it was intentional, because that's an op that everybody in the military knows how to run.
This is where my expertise in chemicals is going to come in. One we are examining, commonly called DCC, was used by Iraq before 1991 as a stabilizing agent for the nerve agent VX.
And did I or did I not tell you before Biden stepped into office he was going to screw Afghanistan up? Did I or did I not? I said he was going to try and get us back into Syria and he was going to screw Afghanistan up. Well, he did airstrikes in Syria. He sent troops to Syria. And Afghanistan is FUBAR. Hashtag told you. Here we go again. I know I'm just a radio host with experience in this stuff, but hey, I'm just a radio host, right? Don't worry. I'm sure Nancy from accounting, who has had no military experience whatsoever, and her Twitter handle with more followers than me, I'm sure that she has more expertise in this, and you should be listening to her. Because I've been talking about this conflict since it happened. I know that most of you are aware of my history with Iraq, my unit history, if you will, in Afghanistan. So I think some of you who have listened for an extended period of time understand that when I'm talking about these two countries, I have a fairly decent grasp of what's going on, mostly because of my time in service. So another false allegation was made against me over the holiday that I committed stolen valor. So I don't know how I could have deployed to Iraq after I have told everybody hundreds of times that I didn't, and that I didn't deploy overseas, and that I didn't see combat. So a separate clip that was taken out of context about my time in the 1990s was posted instead, because he's a liar.
All right, just to be clear, nowhere in any of those clips or in any of those long-form videos did he ever mention the 1990s. He never did it. Now, I understand on other occasions, he said that he never deployed. Got it. Unfortunately, Casey is not a very famous individual. So when you tell one group of people that you have extensive knowledge and experience, part of the world you've never been to, that's called a lie. I understand on other occasions you told people that you never deployed and you have no experience in those regions. That is not a lie. Both things can be true at once. You are not that famous for everyone to know your entire personal history. It doesn't work that way. So we've seen what we've seen. There is nothing that explains the words that came out of his mouth in those clips. He committed stolen valor, plain and simple. That's all I got for right now. Stay informed, folks.
I didn't come here to rescue Rambo from you. I came here to rescue you from him. You're dealing with an expert in guerrilla warfare, with a man who's the best with guns, with knives, with his bare hands. Rambo was the best.
They drew first blood, not me.
It's over!
Nothing is over!